Today on the John Ankerberg Show, people in countries around the world are aware that Americans are in the midst of a presidential election that will culminate in about 4 months. The parties have picked their candidates, and we have just finished watching the Republican and Democratic conventions. Today, I thought you and Christians in other countries might be interested in learning how God's Word, the Bible, applies to some of the issues facing us. Also, what is at stake for Americans? And how might the policies of a new president affect Christians in other countries? We invite you to join us for this special edition of the John Ankerberg Show. Welcome to our program. I'm John Ankerberg. Thanks for joining me. Today I want you to hear 3 special guests that I interviewed during a previous presidential election. And when I listened to their interview again, I was amazed that we were discussing the same issues then that we're talking about today. The only difference being that the problems today, such as Islamic terrorism, the debt, the economy, social issues, government encroachment of our religious freedoms, they've all gotten much bigger and they carry more dire consequences. My guests are Dr. Frank Wright, who was president of the National Religious Broadcasters for over 10 years and represented the concerns of Christian broadcasters to Congress and the FCC. Also, Janet Parshall, the popular Christian radio host of In the Market. And finally, Craig Parshall, a constitutional lawyer who serves as special counsel to the American Center for Law and Justice. I asked them what they thought was at stake in the coming presidential election. Here's what they said. Listen.
There are several things. What's at stake right here happens to be the soul of America. A couple of hot-button issues immediately that define the soul of a nation is whether or not we value the sanctity of human life. The 2 individuals that are running for President of the United States could not be farther apart in the spectrum on this issue than the 2 that are seeking the office of President. Secondarily, when we look at the definition of traditional marriage, 2 diametrically opposite positions. When we look at the issue of national sovereignty and national security, couldn't be farther than the truth. What about the moral aspect of breaking the back of a family economically? Diametrically opposite positions by the 2 candidates. And last but certainly not least, look at the worldview promulgated by these 2 candidates on the subject of judges. Judges who will leave a fingerprint on this culture for not 4 years or 8 years, but could do it for 30 to 50 years.
Yeah, let's go into that a little bit more, Craig. The fact is that this is not about just the next 4 years or 8 years. Speak to the importance of just Supreme Court judges on this whole debate.
One of the most powerful rights and privileges and opportunities that any president has is to appoint his or her choice of nominees to the Supreme Court. And if history tells us anything, in the next presidential administration, usually it's at least 1 or 2 appointments to the Supreme Court. And you look at the age of the Supreme Court justices right now, their health concerns, it's probably going to be at least 2 during the next presidential administration. Those Supreme Court justices will not only govern during that administration, but if history tells us anything on that, it will be a law in effect for at least 2 to 3 decades. So American citizens will reap the benefits or the unfortunate bad law of a Supreme Court justice for the next 30 to 40 years.
Frank, on behalf of the NRB, you're up there, you're talking with senators, you're watching what the Congress does, and you're seeing firsthand how decisions are being made. Why do we need to bring biblical values to the public square in terms of our politicians, of holding their feet to the fire to the things that we believe in?
Well, John, you've heard Janet and Craig describe sort of a tripartite process of arriving at who the best candidate is. First, you look for personal integrity in the life of the person. If there's no personal integrity, it doesn't matter what their political philosophy is. They may say one thing and do another. Secondly, you look for experience. Does this person have the ability to govern, the experience necessary to implement the things that they say they support? Someone without the requisite experience may not be able to accomplish very much. But thirdly, and in direct answer to your question, comes this question of political philosophy. You're electing someone with integrity, hopefully, someone with experience, and then what is their view of how government should work? Should government be something that's growing metastically and consequently are human freedoms receding as the founders feared and even predicted? Do the policies that the government enacts tend to be policies that facilitate personal freedom, or do they constrain more and more our freedoms, especially our religious freedoms, our freedom of speech and our freedom of free exercise of our faith? So this question of who occupies the highest office in the land will ultimately impact everybody through legislation, through government regulation, and through the decisions, as Craig has said, that will come down from the federal courts that have become almost a legislative entity unto themselves. We cannot afford to sit out in an election when so much hangs in the balance. And based on NRB's work the last 7 or 8 years on Capitol Hill, we really see some major threats to the very work that you're doing in your program, John. Your ability to go forward may be materially affected by what happens in this election.
Now, folks, there are many important issues that we could talk about today. But do you think that the destruction of 50 million human beings is an important issue? Well, since 1973 in Roe versus Wade, we've aborted over 58 million children in the womb. And our two presidential candidates have been asked where they stand on this issue. And we've learned that they hold diametrically opposite positions. I asked Janet Parshall why she thought protecting unborn children in the womb was a defining issue. I'd like you to listen.
I want them to understand that abortion is not a wedge issue. It defines the soul of a nation. If we don't get this issue right, all other issues pale in comparison. And if the average person watching this program would have thought back in 1973 that we would be sitting here in the 21st century talking about 50 million lives, an utterly incomprehensible number, what would we have done 10, 15, 20 years ago to stop this genocide in the United States of America? So what we have to do is say, look, it's not a wedge issue, it is the defining issue. It's the soul of a candidate, and ultimately it becomes the soul of a country. You know, it really boils down to two mutually exclusive worldviews on this. The Democratic platform talks about having a woman's so-called right to choose, and they veil it with the so-called right to privacy. The Republican Party really and truly believe ultimately in the sanctity of human life, the personhood of the preborn, and therein lies the distinction between the two parties. But if you wanted to argue it biblically, it's very easy to do. There's no ambiguity on God's position on this. We're fearfully, wonderfully made, knit together in our mother's womb. Before we drew our first breath outside of our mother, all of our days had been foreordained for us. So there is no gray in God's word on this particular subject. But if you go and you drop it in the context of the culture, the way in which this was sold as a bill of goods, quite honestly, to the public was, well, a woman's in a crisis situation and she has ultimate authority over her own body. She can do anything she wants to. The flip side of that argument was, well, wait a minute, there are two distinct and unique persons here. You can be a mother and you can be carrying a son. You might have brown eyes, your son has blue eyes. You might have A positive blood, your baby might have O positive blood. From the get-go, every physician in America understands you are dealing with two separate and unique individuals here.
Let's slow it down for the secular person. The fact is, let's start with the fact of science. Medical science says life begins at conception. You got your favorite author on that one? I mean, I've got people that testified in Congress on this. Give you one of them. Okay, Dr. Michelin M. Matthew Roth of Harvard University testified before Congress that life begins at conception. She said, in biology and in medicine, it is an accepted fact that the life of an individual organism produced by sexual reproduction begins at conception or fertilization. World famous French geneticist Jerome Lejeune stated, to accept the fact that after fertilization has taken place, a new human has come into being is no longer a matter of taste or opinion. The human nature of the human being from conception to old age is not a metaphysical contention. It is plain experimental evidence. And there's a lot of other folks that I've got here that we could also put on the board. But life begins at conception. That is human life. Now, the thing is, are we going to protect that or not? If we don't, what are the consequences for the rest of life?
You know, that's a great point because people for a long period of time failed to see the interconnectedness between all these issues. The minute we decided that abortion on demand was legal for all 9 months of pregnancy, and that's exactly where we're at right now, the next thing we saw was that we were going to start practicing infanticide. That's what partial birth abortion really is. It's taking the life of a baby that's been separated from the mother. It's infanticide. Then we start dealing with embryonic stem cell research, where we really say, well, you're just a blob of tissues. Same argument we used in '73. We begin to destroy that matter. That one's easy, by the way, John, to unpack. Anybody watching this broadcast today who didn't start out as an embryo, please raise their hand. There's the ethical dilemma in a nutshell. Then we begin to see going after passive and active euthanasia. So you start with the first of situational ethics, and that's really what this is, and you see a domino effects where all of these other sanctity of human life issues are utterly impacted by one decision handed down in 1973.
All right, Kate Michelman, former president of NARAL, Pro-Choice America, and Francis Kissling, a longtime advocate of abortion rights, wrote a column for Salon.com arguing for their position, it's no more moral to have a baby than to abort a baby. All right? And I found it interesting that in a Gallup poll when 90% of the American people did not know the answer to this question. When did Roe versus Wade give us permission to actually abort a child? Is it for end of the first trimester? Is it 6 months, 7 months, 8 months? Where does it come? They didn't know the answer to that. What is the answer to that, by the way?
9 months.
9 months.
And you know what was amazing about the debate on partial birth abortion, and all three of us were there when it happened, is that C-SPAN's cameras were situated on the floor of the Senate, and some graphics were put up to explain exactly what this horrific form of infanticide was all about. And the feminists tried desperately to go in and get the C-SPAN cameras shut off because they didn't want the American public to know what this procedure was. And that's because, John, it tapped into this sort of patent ignorance that said, well, we don't really do that in this country. I mean, when it's just a blob of tissue in those first 3 months, that's really the only time we do this, right? And when they began to understand that viability was absolutely substantiated, that these were living human beings who were, by the way, feeling pain, one of the most powerful hearings we ever heard on the Hill was to have neonatologists come up and tell us what it was like in an intrauterine experience with a baby, when the baby's still under mama's heart, still inside of her uterus, how these babies recoil when they feel pain. And they were talking about the spike in their blood pressure and how much they were feeling pain. So when the average American person began to understand the uniqueness and the personhood, to make a statement like Kissingly did, to say that there's no moral difference between killing a child and allowing a child to live, that's ignorance par excellence.
I've had folks actually that have worked with me, and I've loved them. And one day, some of these folks have come privately to me and said, I've had an abortion. And it was many years ago, and I can't get over it. This post-abortion syndrome, the guilt that they feel, and all the questions. What would be my child? What would he be feeling? And if I go to heaven and he's there, what am I going to say to him or her? Okay? Say a word first about the folks that have had abortions and are living with this tremendous guilt.
Well, John, I'm glad you brought that up because it wasn't just people that you've worked with. If you look at the church in America, capital C Universal Church, 1 out of 4 women on any Sunday morning sitting in the pews is post-abortive. And she's probably not told somebody 5, 10, 15, 20 years after the experience, because the father of lies has told her that somehow this is beyond the grace of Calvary, that somehow she cannot gain back his favor and his love because of what she did. And the reality of what she did is so profound in her life. You know, the father of lies, this whole industry, and that's what it is. This is about money. This is about filling coffers. You know, they'll take $250 at most of these abortion mills and they'll allow you to put it on your credit card. They do 15 to 20 an hour on most Saturday mornings. It's just an assembly line doing abortion on demand. But for the woman who's listening today who had that experience, she needs to understand that it was the completed work of Calvary, that he loves her with an everlasting love, that he will separate sin as far as the east is from the west from his loving heart. And she needs to understand that she can go to him for restoration and healing and hope. And here's what she knows. What she knows is something that a lot of people in America don't know, and that is what these procedures are like. So that people's eyes won't glaze over, John, with a lot of medical terms, let me describe it in real, just common street language. In the first trimester, predominantly, it's about vacuuming out the uterus, literally going in and suctioning out the uterus, pulling out exactly what the contents of the uterus are. I interviewed a pro-life nurse once who told me that she had no idea what it was like, and by law, they're required to make sure that they do some sort of pathological assessment after the procedure. So they look to say that there's 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, a torso, and this nurse's job was to clean up the procedure room when it was done, and she decided to hold up a jar, and she looked, and bobbing in the jar were the limbs of this baby. She thought, well, I thought this was a blob of tissues. I had no idea that this was all about. And then, of course, a horrific procedure of partial birth abortion where just by legal mandate, their feet are turned in a breech position so that they're delivered feet first. And as the body comes out, but the head is still inside the mother, a scissors is plunged into the base of the neck, the brain tissue is suctioned out, and then the head is crushed so that they deliver a dead baby. Now, that baby was alive 30 seconds before that procedure was done. So I have to tell you, John, it's absolutely barbaric and overwhelming, and that's where I stand stymied. And I have debated every major feminist in this country. What I can understand is, first of all, why do you not see the personhood in this debate? You would be the first people to say, we marched for civil rights in this country. We understood how pernicious slavery was. How can you not see the parallel in this particular debate as well? But then I realized something. With these feminists that I've debated, I look and I remember being on a stage once with 5 of the key women feminists in this country, and I went right down the aisle. She's had an abortion, she's had an abortion, she's had an abortion. So much of that movement, John, was built on anger and rage on the outside, but on the inside, it was looking for some kind of societal justification for a decision that they made that is irreversible. And they themselves, without coming to the healing power of the cross, can't quite understand how they silence the pain that walks with them every day of their life.
Now, another issue that Christians in America are facing is the encroachment of the government and the courts on our religious freedoms. Christians must choose wisely when they vote, because the next president will choose between 2 to 4 new Supreme Court judges who could drastically curtail our religious freedoms. Craig Parshall has represented the rights of Christians before the Supreme Court, and I asked him about some of the cases and the dangerous trends that he sees taking place. Listen.
You know, it's interesting because if you look at the historical view, John, and I believe that history is one of the greatest teachers that we have, and you look at the old Soviet Union, they used to bang their chest and say with pride, we have full religious freedom here. And what they meant by that was that you were free to think religious thoughts, but you could never speak them and you couldn't act on them. Now, the privatization of religion is one of the most dangerous trends in America. And more we're seeing the fact that Christians are able, the government says, to think religious thoughts. But when it comes in conflict with the secular ideas of the mainstream press or our secular institutions, then suddenly our rights are being inhibited. If you look at the homosexual rights issue as an example, you're seeing that really the homosexual rights movement is really not about equal rights for homosexuals. The ultimate destination for that train is going to be in the roundhouse of censorship of Christians, because the church is the last and best moral voice in terms of what the Bible says about traditional marriage and what it says about aberrant lifestyles. So Christians around the country over the last 2 decades or so of my law practice before coming to NRB, I've seen an increasing trend. I represented a nurse in Pennsylvania who was fired from her nursing position because as a Bible-believing Christian, she felt she might be intolerant toward homosexual clients. Recently, a counselor in a psychological clinic was fired as a born-again Christian because they thought they might be intolerant toward the homosexual persons that they dealt with. There's a photographic company down in New Mexico where they were asked to photograph a homosexual and lesbian marriage ceremony. They said, well, in my rights as a Christian, my beliefs come in conflict with this, I can't do this. They were sued by a discrimination tribunal and fined and sanctioned because they were intolerant of that homosexual lifestyle. So Christians really are in the crosshairs of this movement, and that's where it's going.
Janet, wrap this up for us. I believe we're talking about 4 or 5 issues here. Who's going to be elected to the Supreme Court? Sanctity of human life. We're talking about the defense of our country. Are we going to be safe here? We're talking about such things as religious liberty. Are we going to be able to express our thoughts wherever we're getting those thoughts from? A lot is at stake. Again, to the person that is listening to you right now, what would you say to encourage him?
I would say stop listening to the majority spy report. Too often we think they're giants in the land, but we're just grasshoppers. What we need to do first and foremost is spend time on our knees, understand that God is not in the throne room wringing his hands, wondering what the outcome will be. Truth is still on the throne. What we have is an unbelievable opportunity. Tumultuous though the times may be, we have an unbelievable opportunity to step into the marketplace of ideas, and we can do that so easily at the voting booth, and really and truly let our voices be heard. Every single one of us, John, has a sphere of influence. You don't have to be the head of an organization or practicing before the Supreme Court or even sitting in front of a microphone. In your own sphere of influence, live for truth, know what truth is, speak truth, do it in a loving fashion, and then let the winds blow though they may, because we will never ever know exactly how profound the influence of truth is until we're standing in front of the one who said himself, I am truth.
Now, folks, after hearing all of this today, I hope that you'll be encouraged to apply biblical principles to some of the issues that we as Christians are facing. You know, in just 4 months, Christians here in America, we're going to have the opportunity to vote and express our biblical values. Jesus commanded us to be salt and light to our community. You know that salt's a preservative that works when it penetrates into food, and it keeps that food from decaying. Salt becomes useless when contaminated with other chemicals. And Christians must penetrate our society while keeping themselves from being influenced by sin in the world. Salt also enhances the flavor of the food that it seasons. And Jesus wants us as Christians to enhance the flavor of life in this world by how we live. And similarly, light penetrates darkness. And for Christians to know the truth and fail to stand for it, Jesus says, is as senseless as lighting a lamp and putting it under a basket. Now, one of the ways that we as Christians are light to the world is by presenting the gospel to people. 8 years ago, we were televising our programs to folks in all 50 states here in America and to people in the 10 provinces of Canada. But about that time, God placed a burden on our hearts to reach out to people in countries overseas. And as He did this, He also opened doors for us to start broadcasting into the 28 states in Europe, the 22 countries in the Middle East, and into 54 countries in Africa. And we were absolutely amazed when 3 million people responded that first year. It led us to wonder how many more people could we reach if we broadcast our programs in the people's own language. As we prayed about that, God led me to fly to India to meet with television network owners there. And soon we began to translate and broadcast our programs on 3 large television networks in Hindi, Telugu, and Tamil. These 3 networks can be viewed by 80% of India's 1.2 billion people. Then a few months later, we met the president of the major Russian television network and began broadcasting our programs across all 11 time zones of Russia in the Russian language and also into the Ukraine and the Ukrainian language. We've seen a great response from the people in Russia. Next, God opened the door for us to broadcast in Romania in their language, and then in Hebrew out of a network in Jerusalem to the 6 million people in Israel. Finally, God opened the door for us to broadcast on a network that reaches 1.2 billion people across Europe, Russia, the Middle East, Africa, India, the Philippines, Australia, and countries in the Orient. Now, folks, because you've trusted us and supported our efforts, over 4 billion people in 206 countries can now turn to a TV channel in their own home, watch our television programs, and hear the gospel. A few years ago, I never dreamed something like this was even possible. But as a result of this outreach, we are literally swamped with people coming to us for help. Let me give you a couple of examples of what we're facing. For the most part, people overseas respond to our TV programs via their smartphones, tablets, and computers using the internet. In the first year we started broadcasting overseas, it took 12 months for 3 million people to contact us. But last January, in just 30 days, we saw over 2 million people interact with our information at our social media site at facebook.com/John Ankerberg Show. And it's grown even more since then. In April, 4.5 million people interacted with our information. And in May, 8.1 million people did. Last month on YouTube, our television programs were viewed 220,000 times in 212 countries. And since 2009, they've been viewed over 6,131,000 times. But with millions of people interacting with us each month, we're quickly using up our funds. And folks, I need help right away to not only sustain our ministry to all of these people, but to increase our outreach even more. You ask, how many more people do you think you could reach? Well, I believe that if we can raise $700,000 this month, soon we will be interacting with over 20 million people online, presenting and defending the gospel. Further, every single day we are seeing a host of people accept Christ and are enrolling them into our discipleship course. If someone gave a gift of $300,000 today as a result of our recent testing, we believe we know the countries where we could reach and lead 1 million people to the Lord and enter them into a discipleship course. So in the midst of all the turmoil that we are seeing in the world, we're also seeing God work in some amazing ways. But folks, we simply cannot take advantage of all these opportunities without your help. You say, what can I do, John? I'd like to ask you to prayerfully consider giving some size gift today to help us. If you'll give a gift of $100, you may choose any one of 3 special television packages that our staff has put together. First is our new prophecy package. It features 8 television series and contains 32 half-hour TV programs. It includes our series, Israel Under Fire. 13 scholars answer tough questions about the rapture, the tribulation, and the second coming. World events in biblical prophecy, the Middle East and the last days. Step by step through the rapture. Step by step through the book of Daniel. many of these with different scholars and a lot of them with Dr. Jimmy DeYoung. And finally, the coming economic crisis and the financial signs of the end times with Dr. David Jeremiah. Then second is our new science package. It features 8 television series and contains 33 programs, including The Mystery of the Missing Fossils, The Case for Intelligent Design, The 4 Great Discoveries of Science, all of these with Dr. Stephen Meyer. In addition, what scientific evidence proves God created and designed the universe, step by step through creation? Science discovers the universe had a beginning. Can the biblical account of creation be reconciled with scientific evidence? And why the Big Bang is evidence that God created the universe. All of these with astronomer and astrophysicist Dr. Hugh Ross. Then third is our package, God's Encouragement. It features 8 television series and contains 30 programs including How You Can Be Sure You Will Spend Eternity with God and Hope for Those Who Doubt, both with Dr. Erwin Lutzer. Then our series, So You Don't Fall Away from the Faith with Dr. Darrell Bach. Dealing with Doubt with Dr. Gary Habermas. God's Help When You Suffer. God's Comfort When You're Discouraged, Depressed, and Fear the Future. And how God can help you deal with chronic pain, disability, and illness, all with Johnny Erickson Tata and Dr. Michael Easley. And finally, God's Encouragement for Today's Christian, a sermon I preached at Dr. David Jeremiah's church. Now you may choose any one of these 3 packages for a gift of $100, or you may request all 3 for $300. And if some of you are able to give a gift of $1,000 or $100,000, I hope that you will do so. We've put together these special television packages with very special prices with the hope that everyone will give something. Now, if you're only able to give a gift of $25, I'd like to send you the 3 programs in our series, God's Help When You Suffer with Johnny Erickson Tata and Dr. Michael Easley. Folks, I'm asking for your help today so that we can reach out to millions of people in over 200 countries to present the gospel and to encourage Christians. If you'll help me, please call us right now at 1-800-805-3030. That's 1-800-805-3030. You may also call that same number any day this week, or if you wish, you may also go to our website at jashow.org, where we have a secure place for you to give your gift. Our number again is 1-800-805-3030. I'll appreciate your help very much. And to learn how to start a relationship with Jesus Christ, go to our website at jashow.org and click on Pray to accept Jesus Christ as your Savior.